let's talk a little bit about no-fault personal injury insurance, which has really helped insurance fraud burgeon. I should also add that you were telling me that Ohio and West Virginia they are not no-fault states. So this is not a problem in either Ohio and West Virginia. But since it is in other states, it affects Ohioans and West Virginians because it still causes our insurance rates to rise. Explain a little bit about what that means, no fault, and how it's helped these fraudulent people run their schemes.
Well, first of all, the no-fault system was first adopted by many states 20 or more years ago. And it was initially supposed to help control the rising cost of automobile insurance. The concept is that individuals will give up the right to sue for their pain and suffering in exchange for guaranteed medical care.
And prompt guaranteed medical care.
And prompt guaranteed medical care that they don't need to go about proving that someone was at fault for injuring them in order to get paid for the accident. And as a result of that, and by doing that, they give up then, in some respects, the right to sue. And in some jurisdictions, that has been grabbed on by unscrupulous medical providers as an opportunity to get a hold of some quick free money. Because if I continue to treat somebody, the system was set up to be very prompt, very quick. There was supposed to be little investigation going on because fault was not an issue as to whether someone was at fault for this injury or not, or this accident or this injury or not. So that the whole system was built around making sure people get compensated quickly. And unscrupulous providers then have, over the years, been taking advantage of that by providing, again, very costly medical care, unnecessary medical care for treatment and providing bills for treatment not rendered and things of that sort.
One thing that's so disturbing in hearing stories like this is that clearly this no-fault guarantee, very prompt, especially if you're injured, is really a consumer service. So it sounds like a good thing to me. Mm-hmm. So it's very disturbing that it's being used by some people in such a terrible way. And does that mean that maybe are some states considering getting rid of no fault and causing people to take longer time to get their insurance payments? And I mean, it sounds like the consumer is ultimately going to get hurt in a number of ways here, not just in rising costs, but in also poorer service. Is that a possibility?
It has happened in a few states already. Most recently it happened in Colorado, where the no fault system has been abandoned there. Because of the rising costs, because of the fraud that was going on and so forth. And in the short term, it's probably going to save the citizens in Colorado some money, but in the long term it won't, because then it will cause increasing costs of injury claims, because now people can sue from $1 day one for injuries, and that will ultimately drive the costs up. But you're right. I mean, ultimately, the consumer is the one who's going to be harmed here. In most states, they're still trying to clamp down on the fraud aspects of it. There have been some recent legislation passed, particularly in New Jersey, that has really helped tighten up the system. Although there's still a significant amount of fraud still occurring, it's getting more and more difficult in some of these no-fault jurisdictions because of some of the changes in the laws that they've been putting in place.
Has there ever been discussion on the federal level of doing something? Because it seems to me when you have 50 states and everyone has different rules, does that make it harder for insurance companies to police fraud? And has there ever been discussion about possibly having federal laws and cooperation among all the states to have common rules? And how does that work?
Well, first of all, insurance is one of those commodities that is regulated by the 50 states, and also most
individually by each
individual state. So each individual state sets their own laws concerning insurance, but they also set their own laws in terms of tort. When somebody can sue somebody for an injury, under what circumstances, how do you prove fault, whether you have a no-fault system or don't have a no-fault system. That's always been delegated to the states, and the federal government has not gotten involved in that to any great degree. Where they have gotten involved in, however, has been when activity crosses state lines. So that if there is a fraud that is occurring in multiple jurisdictions in multiple states, there are federal laws that can be invoked, things like mail fraud statutes, or even the RICO statute, which was originally developed to fight organized crime, is being used more and more often in schemes involving medical fraud that may cross multiple jurisdictions.
And especially since it sounds like organized crime has been getting involved in medical insurance fraud anyway, at least organized crime in the sense of gangs becoming involved. So it sounds like that kind of a law would apply anyway.
Yes, correct. And not just the street gangs getting involved, there, also at the medical provider level, there are non-doctors who are getting involved in medical practices and using that as an opportunity to make money and to also maybe launder illegal money.
Explain that a little bit. When you mean non-doctors getting involved in medical practices, do you mean actually providing a medical service or running medical businesses?
No, in most states, and it's true in Ohio and West Virginia, that individuals who are non-doctors are not allowed to own medical practices. The concept there, or the idea behind all of that, is that doctors should have the interests of their patients in mind when they're treating their patient. And if your medical practice is owned by a non-doctor, oftentimes the doctor then is influenced by the owners of the clinic to do things that are not in the best interest of the patients, and that's been happening more and more frequently in medical practices dealing when fraud is involved.
Tell us briefly just what you see for the future. What's your prognosis for medical insurance fraud, and what insurance companies and state governments can do about solving this problem?
Well, I think in many jurisdictions there still need to be tougher laws related to the crime of insurance fraud. But more importantly, I think there has to be more resources focused on this issue. Many states do have good laws and strong laws, but it's not a priority among law enforcement to any great degree. There are states that are focusing more and more effort and more resources, but it's very costly, and insurance fraud is still seen as a crime of nonviolence, and it's not a priority among most law enforcement agencies because of that.
Thanks. This has been so interesting. I want to thank Glenn Wolfe, a certified insurance fraud investigator, for joining us today. For upcoming episodes, viewer feedback, and important links to information about health and medicine, log on to our website at the address that appears on your screen. Thanks for joining us in HealthVision, a production of WOUB Public Television.